If you want to know how you can build such a 3-chamber compost yourself from very simple materials, then stay tuned, because that is exactly what this video will be about. Hello and a warm welcome. I'm Franz from Keep It Grün, and as you can see, currently we have autumn, winter is approaching, and that means it's the season to build something in the garden. So today we want to build our own 3-chamber compost. In a moment I will tell you exactly what that means and what other kinds of composts are out there. Then I will talk about the perfect location, because once it's set up, it's pretty hard to move. After that, it's time for action, and we build the composter step by step, followed by some important tips and tricks how you can make the perfect compost soil. Let's get right into it. Very briefly, what kind of composts are out there? I think you all are very familiar with the classic compost pile. You might have also heard about the vermicompost. If not, check out this video up here where Niels explains exactly how to build it. But today it's all about the 3-chamber compost, and we are going to build it ourselves. As the name implies, it consists of 3 chambers. The first chamber is where all your kitchen and garden waste go and where the decomposition starts. In the second chamber, the decomposition continues, so that in the third chamber we have perfect, matured, finished compost ready on store. But before we talk about the composter in detail, let's talk about the perfect location. Since it's hard to change location once the composter is set, we should spend some thoughts on it. It should not be placed in the direct sun or in a windy spot, since the composter quickly dries out and cannot work properly. If you place it under a tree, it is protected against both. If possible, you should also protect it from frost, because this harms the conversion of the organic material. I have chosen this area here. On the one hand, we have enough space to build it, and on the other, it is not in the blazing sun, which means the composter does not dry out quickly. We also have a little bit of shade from the trees around it. Therefore, this is the perfect location for us. But before we can set it up here, we have to first clear the area. There are still some gravel stones around here, which Niels would surely be happy to use in other construction works in the garden. So let's get right into it. Now we have cleared the ground, and the 3 chambers will extend to a width of 3 meters and a depth of 1 meter. The first chamber sits on top and the last on the bottom, so it's easier to handle. We want to build the composter in the same way I built my raised bed. So a bit of wicker work, for which we need hazelnut poles. In between, we want to use some old woody boards, which we can recycle here. So I would say, off to the woods to find some hazelnut rods. Here we are finally in our own little forest. Here are mainly hazelnut bushes, which we grow exactly for building something like the composter. Now let's pick some nice ones, cut them down, and then we can take those back to the garden, where we can start building our composter. We have now carted the first load of wood out of the forest. That's not enough, but we will be taking those up to the garden. So now it's time for hauling. So by now we have already prepared some things. I will explain very briefly how it goes. The back wall will be built in a similar way as a raised bed from hazelnut sticks. For this we have now cut the sticks on a length of 3 meters, as they should go here. We always want to put 2 such sticks next to each other, and then in between them we line up the 3-meter sticks. In this way we will first be building the back wall. And I would say, let's just head into it. As you can see, we've now built the back wall. This is also the final height. The sticks are temporarily held together by zip ties, but we will change that in a moment. So what's next? Also the side walls here and on the other side should be built exactly the same way as we built the back wall. After that we will put a row of the boards that we're lying around here in front. The front wall will not be as high as the other walls, to make it easy to reach the composter. Since we will end up with 3 chambers, there have to be 2 separation walls in the middle here. But we will get to that later. I would say we will continue with the side walls next. One very important tip is that under the composter it should be only open ground, so no concrete surface. This is important so that microorganisms can crawl up through the soil in your composter and activate it. If you have only very poor soil or concrete surfaces around you, you can also actively add microorganisms to your compost to kickstart it. So now we have already finished the outer walls and the large back wall. These were built with hazelnut twigs and branches, and since those are not completely straight, we ended up with these slits in the side. But those can also be of advantage for us, since now air can get into the compost and can help it to decompose faster. Now we have cut the boards to the right size so that we can use them as separation walls. Then we can add the front wall. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and start with the separation walls. As you can see, we have divided our 3 chambers. This is the first one and the highest one. It is also closest to the kitchen, so we have the shortest way of adding waste. I'm standing in the second chamber right now. After 6 months, we can take all the compost from the first chamber and rearrange it in the second chamber, where it can decompose further. Lastly, after another 6 months, we move it into the third chamber, which is the smallest one. Here we store the finished compost, which we can apply directly into our garden. As a last step, we have to add the front wall, so that the compost doesn't fall out in front. We've also been trampling around here a lot, so I will loosen up the soil a little bit more, so that the microorganisms from below can easily enter the compost and help to decompose the biomass. I say we will continue to set up the front wall so that we are finished. And then there are important tips on composting, because there's a lot you can do wrong. So the first important tip about composting is that the whole thing should be as heterogeneous as possible. So you add a lot of different materials into the compost. There are also different ratios between carbon and nitrogen that you should keep in mind. If you want to know more about it, we have prepared a podcast episode and a guide article for you in the video description. You should also watch out for moisture. If it's too dry, you can add a little water. Also watch out for the density. If it's too dense, it starts to rot and the compost starts to stink. If the compost stinks, that's always a sign that something goes wrong. now we are ready. The last wall is up and we are done with the construction of our composter. It's important to say that we have tried to recycle as many materials as possible, so we didn't buy any boards or so. It might not be the most optically pleasant look, but it will certainly serve its purpose. Now let's turn to the things that you can add to the composter. These are, for example, kitchen waste, if they are not treated or sprayed with any pesticides, because pesticides can inhibit the composting process. You can also add citrus peels, but due to the essential oils in them, they might take some longer to decompose. You can also add scraps from the garden. I've already added some remains of nasturtium. What you shouldn't do is adding a lot of woody materials like branches and twigs. And if so, you have to shred them before. What you should also not add is any kind of fish or meat. To start the compost, you add all the waste into the first chamber. And after about 6 months, you take all the materials, mix them up and add them to the second chamber. And after another 6 months, you do the same again into the third chamber, and in the third chamber you have the ready compost for your garden.
Hier habt ihr dann eure fertige Komposterde.
If you want to build such a 3-chamber composter yourself, just check out our guide article about it that I will link you in the description. It contains everything you need to do step by step with some alternative materials and a list of everything that you can add to your compost and how to use it most effectively. Lastly, a few important tips from my side. You should cover your compost during the winter and also during the summer heat for 2 reasons. Firstly, to protect the compost from frost in the winter, and in the summer to protect it from dry wind, to keep it moist and cozy for your microorganisms.
Bei unseren Hochbeetbauarbeiten sind jetzt noch so ein paar alte Bretter übrig geblieben.
Wir haben Composter gemacht.
Ja, stimmt. Ich habe die ganze Zeit das Hochbeet angeguckt. Bei unseren Composter-Bauarbeiten
From our composter construction, we have a few leftovers of these boards. In one of his permaculture videos, Niels explained how to put them to good use. You can find the video link in the info box. I'm experiencing right now how it feels to be compost in such a nice composter. And let me tell you, it's great. If you like what we do, feel free to subscribe. Here I put a link to a very nice video about biochar. And here you can find a playlist about permaculture from Niels. I wish you an awesome week and that you can spend some time in your garden.
Ich wünsche euch eine schöne Woche. Wurschtelt ein bisschen in eurem Garten rum. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.